Hello and welcome to episode 1437 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Thursday, July 24th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by a group of fine gentlemen and Justin Mason, Joe Orrico, Vlad Sedler, and the aforementioned Justin Mason. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Got the round table going today. It should be a lot of fun, right, man. Glad to have Vlad on.
Vlad, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Oh, it's amazing. Talking baseball with old friends, middle of the season. I'm excited. Thanks for having me, guys.
Justin, how you surviving over there?
I'm surviving. You know, it's still July. It has yet to get hot. I know I've been talking about it all year, but it is officially the coldest summer in the history of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Global doesn't even exist.
Since they started recording temperatures in the 1800s, this is the coldest summer. We were like, oh, Sacramento's going to get really hot and the A's are going to have this insane heat. It just hasn't happened.
It hasn't. I mean, there's still hot days, but overall, you like you said, you have been on it all year about how temperate your spring and summer have been. We don't talk about a lot though, is that your team's actually pretty good. You're always poo-pooing your team. I'm having to convince you that the Giants are actually good, but here they are again, 54-49. I know you've been wanting a teardown for like a decade, which they're just not going to do. So, get used to it as they continue to add gigantic pieces.
It's not that I want a teardown. Just pick a side. Either go all in and say, hey, we're going for it and trade away prospects, whatever, to go get the pieces you need to win now. Mm-hmm. Or tear it down. Don't fence it. And we have Vlad on the show. We're going to talk about the Dodgers and stuff like that. But
we? I don't think we are.
If you're going in, you went in for the Devers move. I expect some more fireworks at the deadline for the Giants. They won't. They're going to go get just a random piece to play second base. They might add a reliever or something like that. It's going to be boring.
Well, it's a new regime. We got to see how they approach a deadline, right? Vlad, go ahead.
I was going to say that. I mean, that's what they're going to do is probably add a middle infielder and then, grab a reliever. But honestly, I think some of the issues with the heat up in the Bay Area and the lack thereof is I think it's Jung-Hoo Lee's fault. And I think as soon as he heats back up like he was in the spring, you'll get some nice weather up there.
He's been too cold, creating an effect that is permeating the city and general area. That makes sense.
It's no joke. So in we are July 24th. Mm-hmm. They have had one day above 70 degrees in San Francisco this year.
What? Day.
That's it.
Oh my God. And you know how cold it gets there already. I mean,
I'm a little farther north where it's a little bit warmer, but where I live, we've had 2 days above 90 degrees, which is insane. We've had 120 degree days. So,
this is the oldest podcast ever talking weather, by the way.
I'm here for weather, Gravy. We're bringing back casual weather.
I just want to be clear that it is the single oldest podcast in the universe for doing a weather conversation. Vlad, you mentioned that they might be going, these beloved Giants of one Justin Mason, chief rival to your beloved Dodgers, that they might be going for a middle infielder. And you're probably right, but who the hell is that going to be? If you look at the athletic big board that they've got for trade candidates, the highest ranked one is Ozzie Albies. And I'm still not sure that they should even trade him. Even as bad as he's been, he's so cheap that he can't hurt you. Do they go for, this could be perfect for Justin. Do they go for somebody like a Willy Castro, or is Minnesota, are they gonna, is that who they get? That's a Giants player, isn't it? Isn't Willy Castro the most Giants player?
Very much so.
Plays
That's
everywhere.
Exactly the guy that I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
positions of eligibility is perfect.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's who they're gonna get, and they should do more than that, but that's where they should start. All right. Well, what we're gonna talk about today is some real hang with them guys, some guys that it was down and dirty through May. Now, not all of them have the same sample size, and we will get into guys that they weren't playing that long, so hanging with them was easier. But then we'll get into some guys that they were there from day one. We tried to stick with them, and it just shows again that why track record is so important, because now we look up a week away from the deadline, and some of these bona fide, bankable, year in, year out pieces are back where they should be. So let's talk about some rebounds to believe in. We're comparing WRC plus totals, weighted runs created plus, through May versus since June 1st, and these gigantic risers here. And we're going to talk about, first off, you got to cop to it if you believed in them or not. You can admit if you are advocating people cut them. And then where we go from here. Let's start with Sal Perez, a guy that, while I've never been the biggest fan, I don't draft him a lot, much to my my own failure in fantasy. He's clockwork, and I never was all that concerned about him. He's had a 98-point flip. He was toting a 62 WRC plus through May, and even though catcher was deep, I'm like, you got to hang with him. You got to. He's got a 160 since June 1st. Justin, we're going to start with you on Sal Perez. Were you holding all the way through, and is he just back to normal now? And now from here forward, he'll just kind of be his projection? Where are you at on Sal Perez's season?
Yeah, he was someone I was just never really upset about, like, what was happening. I knew he was always going to turn around. The XBA was always better than the batting average. He was making fine in-zone contact, hitting the ball hard. And I just think some of these guys, they just age like fine wine, and Sal Perez is one of those dudes that you just kind of set and forget it, and you look at the end of the season. You know, we were talking about it before we got on the air. You were complaining about your Tigers struggling right now. It's like, you know, like, this is just like the beginning of the season. If this slump happened, you know, in the middle of, you know, May, no one would ever notice. Sal Perez,
Tigers fans would notice. Don't worry, Tigers fans. I told them how wrong he is about that. This is a legitimate problem being exposed.
You guys are fine. The Sal Perez is fine. A lot of these guys I knew we're going to be talking about.
But some weren't. And there was people saying cut him, and I might have been one of those people on some of these guys. We're gonna
but no one was saying. I don't think anybody was saying cut Sal Perez.
I don't either. But
I wrote multiple buy low pieces on him for Fantasy Pros.
But given his rise, you can tell how bad he was. Again, 62. Vlad, bring you in on Sal Perez here. He was at a 62 WRC plus. Now we don't. That's just a catch-all number that kind of gets us to where we need to be. He still had some pop, but the BABIP was way down. Was there any thought of cut of Sal Perez in like a one catcher situation as we were moving into June?
No, there was never a point of that, especially, I mean, really in any format, I think, unless someone's maybe playing a 10-teamer and, you know, I mean, and it's a one catcher league, then perhaps that could have been a reason to move on. But I mean, listen, it's still the same guy. I have one of the easiest columns that I write every year. It's in the middle of the season, right after the All-Star break, about guys that are going to step up in the second half. And it's just like a quick looking at the formulas, looking at the history, and some of it is just, it writes itself, right? We've been doing it for a decade plus. You're looking at Sal Perez, who, like, you know, it's a career high barrel rate so far, 15%. He was, you know, under in the home runs. Like, his power production wasn't matching his expected production.
Right.
All the StatCast numbers look good. And so, I mean, literally a day before they came back from the break, I'm like, hey, Sal Perez is going to go off. I look like a genius. He hits 4 bombs in 4 games or whatever.
He's been
but
electric
that's what he does
in the second half. Yeah, 5 bombs in 6 games so far for Sal Perez. And, you know, we're gonna beat you over the head a little bit with some of these guys. Of like, this is why we say stick with them. But this, because those are the really hard times. I know I whine about this sometimes. Those are the really hard times of fantasy. Being a fantasy analyst is April and May, of telling everyone to just hold all these players, because it's kind of boring. And you want to say, oh, go pick up this Agustin Ramirez, which, by the way, that would have worked. If you cut a Sal Perez for Agustin Ramirez in a one catcher league, you're fine. So don't worry about it. But a lot of the times when these guys that have been drafted for years and years and years doing great work, that's why we say stick with them. Sal Perez proved that. Now, Joe, unless you have a big difference of opinion here on Sal Perez, I'm going to move on to Nick Kurtz and start with you. Do you have anything on Sal Perez that's different from the other two gentlemen, or were you hanging with him as well?
He's not somebody that I drafted, I don't think, anywhere, just because the cost was relatively high, top 70 pick.
For a good reason, though, because he's as bankable as it gets.
Yeah, he's somebody that I've never been, like you kind of mentioned earlier, I've never been a huge Sal Perez guy. He's never been somebody that I go out of my way to target. The thing that I'm kind of wondering at this point is, do we think he sneaks into Cooperstown? And I don't even think he
sneaks. No.
Well, I mean, there's some.
I got walking into wide open doors.
Oh, so this is interesting, because I got asked this question like a week ago in a Discord channel chat. And I said, I don't think he is a Hall of Famer.
Oh, I think he is.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he is a Hall of Famer. I think, 1, his defense isn't very good. And 2, there is kind of this thing against catchers. Like, there aren't a crap ton of these, you know, very good catchers that kind of get into the Hall. I don't know that Sal Perez. And if you look at like his his comps and stuff like that on Baseball Reference, I don't even know if he's close if you just look at the numbers. Now, I think the numbers should be adjusted because we're holding, past massive numbers and guys who were able to play, 162 games for 20 years because the game wasn't as hard to play.
His most similar guy is Brian McCann, who I also think has a really strong Hall of Fame case.
I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer either.
I just computed my gut numbers, 17.63% chance of getting into the Hall.
I like that. I think that's an interesting number. I like him a bit more there. I don't know. I think we got to get some more catchers in. I'm very pro catcher. All right, let's go to Nick Kurtz here and start with you, Joe. Now, this is one of the different ones already here because he wasn't there from day one, putting up the numbers. Took him a little while to get up, but he was bad instantly. And there was panic, of course. He was still up on April 23rd, so it was the third week of the season. So he still has a decent sample here until June 1st. It ended up being 108 plate appearances, where he's hitting 762 OPS with 5 homers. So it was fine, but he was starting to get cut in some spots before he really turned it on. Because even using this through May does pick up some of the good Nick Kurtz before he got hurt. So he comes back. And it's like, oh, did the injury stifle his goodness? Because he had 4 homers in 5 games right before he got hurt. Turns out, no, because he's been a stone cold god since June 1st. I guess the bigger question here before we get into Kurtz specifically, Joe, is when you make these sorts of large investments in FAB, how committed are you? How long do you hold? Because I know Justin never was with his big investment. He was never dropping Kurtz for nothing, not until maybe this time of year, if he was still playing terribly. But how long do you hold there? And how obviously league size plays a role in there. So when do you start to pull the trigger sooner on a quote unquote failing prospect? And I put it in quotes because he really wasn't failing. It was 3 weeks for Kurtz.
Yeah, I mean, there were 3 big investment guys for me this year. It was Kurtz, it was Jack Caglione, and it was Chandler Simpson. And I think for those type of FAB bids where you're throwing a quarter of your FAB or even more at these players, you got to give them time. You can't be after the first weekend of a 1 for 12 saying, oh, well, you know what, it didn't work out. Like, no, you got to give it more time. We're starting to see that come around with Cags a little bit, and I think we're going to see him have kind of a Kurtz-like second half. Mm-hmm. But how long do you hold on to these guys in general for? I think it really depends on your team. If your team is completely stacked and you can afford to hold on to somebody who is disappointing, then you do it. If you're a team that's really fighting to make it to the postseason, if you're in a head-to-head league or if you're like 7th or 8th in your roto league and you don't really have time to wait around, then maybe you have a bit of a quicker trigger finger. But I think if you're spending anywhere in the triple-digit FAB number,
yeah, triple digits out of $1,000 budget,
10% or higher, whether it's 1,000, 100, 10,000, however much FAB you have, if you're spending 10% or higher, I think you got to give them time. And with Kurtz, he showed exactly why you do that. It's a good guy. A good prospect who is hitting the crap out of the ball in AAA. He's got a great home park.
Unreal, dude.
He checks all the boxes. Now he's a lot better at home than he is on the road, which is something I think is
but that counts.
Noteworthy. It absolutely counts.
It all counts. So he's doing what he needs to do at home so that his away numbers can be fine. 843 OPS, 6 homers in 32 games. That's fine. It's 32 games at home where he's got twice as many homers, 13, and a 1099 OPS. But I'm trying to, when I'm investing that kind of money, again, say 10% on any budget, I got to go at least 100 plate appearances at a minimum. And it's funny, the 3 players you mentioned, because that's kind of been a Goldilocks, too hot, too cold, right in the middle sort of like performance of guys. Like Simpson's been the middle, Cags has been the garbage, and Kurtz has been the god. But for me, Vlad, if I'm going to invest, again, 10+%, 100, 150 plate appearances, almost regardless of how they're doing, unless they lose the playing time. If the spot becomes dead, all bets are off in terms of what you might need to do. But if they're playing, how long are you holding these guys in your 12 and 15 team type leagues? And I know those can be 2 different answers because those league types are very different. But how long are you investing in the prospects to see if they come around? And Cags being a good example right now because we are 160 plate appearances in to a lot of garbage. He has a 148 average. So how long do you hold? Is Cags on the chopping block?
No, I mean, I have him in 12 teamers, OCs where I got him for cheap. And if I need to, I'll pop him on the bench. But for the most part, I don't want to miss what I paid for. And especially like an example like Nick Kurtz, somebody that has done the work. Like most people, you're playing fantasy baseball, even semi-seriously. if you're planning to spend a quarter of your budget and make such an investment in Nick Kurtz, you don't just give up, a couple weeks in because he's slow. We kind of know the way, these players adjust.
What about the
and how things are
economics
going.
dweebs screaming sunk cost fallacy into their phones right now, like this dipshit who wants to start up a cigarette right now? Because I understand that principle. I don't think it always applies here. I'm with you, Vlad. I'm trying to get something off my investment here.
I think it depends. So like if
You're
somebody
muted,
gets
Justin. We
hurt,
can't even hear you if you're talking anything.
I mean, if somebody gets hurt and they're out for a long period of time,
Right.
That's an easy drop. That's a no-brainer, right?
Easy,
But,
yep.
yeah, but like a guy like, I mean, what's the point of why did you spend $200+ if you're going to get off the boat when it's not working out?
Let the economics dweeb come in here. Why are you jumping off so early then? Because you throw sunk cost fallacy at me a lot when I say I hold a guy because of where I drafted them, because I have a reasonable expectation, and that expectation doesn't expire for a period of time based on how much I pay on them.
It's not so much that like you should jump off or you need to jump off. It's that the economics shouldn't play as much of a weight as it does. I'm not saying it doesn't play, it shouldn't have any weight in kind of the calculus of it. But ultimately, once you've spent the money no longer exists, right? So
right, exactly.
The reason
and that's
why
I need to get something from it with that ticket that I have, especially if I don't think that's a fully scratched ticket, so to speak.
But that is the second part that's important, right? If you still believe that it is still not a fully scratched ticket, then you should be holding, right? And I think with Kurtz and Caglione, these are two guys that I've talked about on previous episodes. We talked about Nick Kurtz on May 14th. And I said, and it was during that episode where we talked about like, are triple digit investments actually worth what we put into them? And we both said, for the most part, you shouldn't really be going these massive bids anyways, because they don't pay out often enough that they make sense. But if you're going to make that investment and you still believe in the guy, we both believed in Kurtz. I've said all along, I still believe in Caglione, that he's going to be fine in the long term. So I'm going to hold on to those guys even when they're struggling, or pick them up if someone else drops them. But if you no longer believe in them for whatever reason, don't just hold on to them because you spent money. That's just wasting money.
Okay, so don't let the fab, and I would trust that neither Vlad nor I do this. Don't let the fab be the only reason they're holding the roster spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are times where these prospects come up. And let's be honest, we don't know prospects as well as some people in the industry. And even those people who are prospect guys don't know these guys as well as maybe some say they do, or as maybe
name names. Let's name names.
But because we've got hype around them, we're going to throw a bunch of money at them, right? Right. And like one, I think, like I said, I think triple digit investments on guys are usually bad anyway.
They're generally like, they're not a good return on investment
unless you are really targeting a specific category,
which you were with the power.
Yeah, which you're pretty sure this player is going to give. Like I needed power from Kurtz.
Like steals guys, saves guys. Yeah, we haven't really had many guys like become the closer stamped like what Will Vest did.
If you need Chandler Simpson because of his speed,
he's a great one. Yeah.
You go for it and you go, hey, I'm going to take this gamble that he's going to stay up. But yeah, if it's not panning out, if you're looking at the underlying numbers and you're going, man, this guy just is lost, or this guy's not figuring it out. But like Kurtz's underlying numbers were fine. Caglione's
that was the
underlying
thing.
Numbers were fine. It was a matter of time before they turned around. Yeah, those scenarios you're keeping. But you really need to take it a case-by-case basis and take the name off of it, right? We talk about this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at the name of the player. Look at what the guy is doing under the hood and then make a decision. Don't worry about the price you've attached to it, because that's how you get stuck with these guys in your lineup that are just killing you each week.
No doubt.
One thing I will...
Go ahead, Vlad.
I will say that, sometimes we can convince ourselves of a story based on underlying numbers that
fair.
Yeah, throw us off. Like, for example, if Nick Kurtz was struggling and you look at the fact that if he wasn't in for power, you look at the fact that he's striking out at a 32% clip, you're like, oh, but the strikeout rate's high. Oh, this
and
is
it's still right there
ourselves.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's 32% and he is killing it. And I like that you said that, because I wanted to spin forward with you on Nick Kurtz, because now we're looking at the next great power stud at first base, perhaps. 281 average, 19 bombs in 64 games, but he does have that lurking 32% K rate, balanced a bit by an 11% walk rate, which tells me he knows what he's doing. He's hunting his pitches. There's going to be some strikeouts, but he is teetering on that line where it gets a little dangerous. A 352 BABIP helps him put up that big 281 average. Is he a cornerstone next year, Nick Kurtz, Vlad, at first base?
Well, let's see what he does over the next 2 months, because that's going to tell a story too.
I need now, and you cannot change it in the fall. This is a binding answer that you have to say yes or no right now.
A cornerstone, like he's going to be a
like
top,
top
4th
round,
top 4 or 5 rounds, probably will be. But what I am most certain is going to happen is there's going to come a time in the next couple of weeks, maybe in 3 weeks, where he is not the number 3 hitter. They'll move Rooker back up. He'll maybe not play against lefties some. He's going to strike out a bunch, go on a cold streak, not hit home runs.
45% K rate for 3 weeks.
He's the worst. You know, so
yes, because he has a 200 WRC plus right now. He will come down from this, Nick Kurtz would, because anybody will. That's just the nature of baseball for sure. All right, let's move on. Veterans now. Back to another veteran. We're inadvertently kind of going young veteran until we get to a few young guys in a row. But Yandy Díaz, I never have him, so I'm never plugged in to where people are at with him. So, Joe, maybe you got him, or maybe you remember talking to people. Where were people at on Yandy when he was flopping? Because now you look up, and he's added 88 points. He's doubled up there on his WRC plus. He's toting a 176 now since June 1st. That's obviously fantastic. We know he's a big average guy, and his BABIP's riding hot right now at 372. It was 250 early on. Was this just an easy, it's low BABIP, you drafted Yandy for average, hold tight, or were people jumping ship on Yandy Díaz?
I think people were in shallow leagues. If you're talking 10 and 12 teamers, Yahoo, ESPN leagues, like I'm sure a lot of people cut bait on Yandy after the first month or so.
And then are you okay with that, even understanding that he might come back, because you just got to stick and move in 10 teamers, and like you're okay cutting somebody might regress back to where they're supposed to be, but you want to get somebody who's performing now? Or do you hold firm with guys like that, even in those shallower formats?
I tend to hold firm. Yandy is, I feel like a lot of the time this year when I'm on this show, when we've gone over a hot player, I've been like, yep, I have 1 share. I got no shares, whatever. I was actually really in on Yandy. So he's somebody that I was willing to give a bit of a longer leash. He's my most rostered first baseman this year. But I think
I didn't even know that, by the way. Can we just tout how dope of a host I am? I got lucky that you were the big Yandy guy when I called on you first. That was not planned, folks. I'm just that good. Go ahead, Joe. I understand if you guys all want to leave. I'm such a loser. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you know there aren't other big Yandy guys on this?
There may be, but I picked one right away. That was just brilliant.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing in shallow leagues with first basemen. There was a lot of them at the beginning of the year that were really viable hot pickups. Your guy, Torkelson, Jonathan Aranda, Tyler Soderstrom in the first few weeks.
It was like the only position. Ben Rice before he got catcher eligibility.
It was the only position where people were popping off. Shanwell's been pretty good. Ryan O'Hearn. I could go through. I think there was a great call hot streak. So I feel like in shallower leagues, or even in 12 teamers, and hell, maybe even in some 15 teamers, where somebody saw 5 first basemen lighting the world on fire, they might have cut Yandy Díaz. And at the time, I don't know that it's a horrible decision. He's a guy who's not going to provide a ton of, pretty much no speed. You got a couple steals from him this year, but early
you're getting nothing if you're not getting the batting average, right? Because that is that's not just the core of his fantasy value. That is his fantasy value.
That's it, right? And if he has a year where he hits 258 or something, then you're getting nothing out of him. So I understand people who cut bait on him, but I also I'm somebody who was just a big believer. I drafted a lot for batting average this year. It didn't work out as well as I had hoped, but I targeted batting average specifically in a lot of cases. That's why I ended up with a lot of Bo Bichette and a couple of others who, varying degrees of success. But Yandy is somebody who's in a good park. He's got a good lineup around him. He's always been kind of questionable with the power, but that's really come around this year.
The average always gets there, man. Even last year's 281 is good. Yeah. Like, he does have the 1 year. You said, like, if he hits 1 year where he hits 256, 2021 he hit 256. So people might have held then and they got burned. But now we have 3 great years after that. I think if I did draft him, which again I generally don't, I look for more power at first base and corner. But if I did, you'd have to pry him out of my cold dead hands when he has a 267 BABIP. I'm not leaving until we're in August at that point. Vlad, are you also a big Yandy Díaz guy?
Yeah, he's been
That's awesome. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
been my big guy. I had him pretty much my most owned guy in 2023 when he had the
Now, do you
330.
draft around his power? Do you like boost up? I need a little bit extra power out of 4 or 5 slots to cover that because he's giving me this batting average. So you can take like a Schwarber and pair it with him. Like how do you operate with using your surplus average from Yandy?
Well, it's just kind of making it's the fact that a guy that's going 200 at that time, it was plus 250 ADP, where you potentially have a 300 batting average and leading
Maybe I
off
should be
with
taking
Tampa.
Yandy.
It just you kind of try to make it fit and you figure it out. I mean, obviously, then you can lean in on like an Alonso or a big guy, and then have him as your corner infielder. But this year, I think the ballpark, it was a big deal for me. The minor league parks there and in Sacramento and Tampa, these are guys that I wanted to get a piece of. I mean, the problem also with him always had been a low barrel rate. He'd always, the power never matched that, right? He's over, he's in double digits for the first time in his career. He's always somewhere around 6 or 7%. He's only a few home runs away from, basically exceeding his career best. So he
22. And he's got 17 right now. Yandy Díaz, sorry, just kind of resetting here. 17 bombs in 97 games, 22 and 137 is a career high. He's got a great chance to shatter that record for Yandy Díaz.
He hit 281 last year with it was a huge disappointment last year. He was also hurt for a chunk of the season. He was having issues. So it was kind of a good pickup for this year for the price because it was still post 200.
I'm kind of embarrassed that he's just not on my radar that much. Cause like I said, I gravitate toward the power, but looking at him 33 years old and just so bankable here. He's kind of like an infield, Lourdes Gurriel type, right? Like the batting average is like locked and then you get a little bit of power. And then when they're on a good team, maybe those runs and ribbies are all right. Justin, you were shaking your head a bunch. Are you a Yandy guy too? Am I the only non-Yandyite here?
Yeah, Yandy Díaz is one of those guys that I love in auctions because I feel like
the way he can fit into your team.
because it's so much easier to build the construction of your team that way. And I always feel like he's always going like $5, $6, $7 cheaper than he should in auctions. And I think the average kind of only guys are the guys that really get devalued.
Totally agree.
In auctions. And so like I've been in a situation in 2 of my auction leagues where like early on in the season when I struggled, I had him on my bench because once I picked up Kurtz in both of those leagues, like I had, Soderstrom, Kurtz, and Yandy, and I couldn't fit all 3 at first base. Luckily now
we were talking a lot about that. Like Joe said, all the early guys were first base. And it's like, where am I even going to put this guy, even if I get him?
Yeah, and so I always had kind of faith in Yandy, but I also don't blame people who dropped him. Like Joe said, like there were so many guys who came into the league when an average only guy struggles, you're not getting anything. You're getting
literally nothing.
So, I totally understand, but I think he's also one of these guys that like you can go and buy for a decent price right now. Like you don't need to like overpay in the way that you might need to go overpay for a Nick Kurtz.
Oh, for sure. Kurtz so hot in the market right now. Right now is the worst time to buy Nick Kurtz because like Vlad said, that cold streak is coming. Not through any fault of Kurtz's. It's just the way baseball works, folks. All right. Back to another young guy. This one I missed on too. Now, I might have written the book a little too early on this guy, and he did one of my favorite things, or at least he's doing one of my favorite things. I don't want to call it signed, sealed, and delivered yet. But I'm usually an advocate for guys like Ceddanne Rafaela because they get to learn on the job. And so even though he had some bad numbers put up last year, it's one season. He's 23. They committed to this guy. Just a miss, man. 14-14 already in 98 games with a 271 average. He's been amazing. Justin, I'll start with you. We'll go back around here. I don't think you were much on Rafaela either. I think we might have missed him as a show.
Yeah, I mean, I was not. I'm not going to sit and pretend like I was in on Rafaela. I
was down on him. I will freely admit I was telling people, you do not want him. He's going to lose his job to Ramon Anthony. So I'm fat L on him.
I mean, he's doing the 2025 version of Brenton Doyle and Lawrence Butler, where he has completely changed his contact profile and hit tool. And I don't know if there was a swing change in the offseason that maybe I missed, but you look at what he's done in terms of the changes in zone contact. He had a sub 80% zone contact last season, 79.6%. And I always talk about like that that 80% threshold is, are you a major leaguer? It's not like, oh, are you going to be good or not? If you're not above 80%, unless you are doing something else that's elite, you're just going to really, really struggle. This year it's at 85%, which is league average. And when you add in that power speed combo on top of that, yeah, it's really, really impressive. I will say, just to throw a little cold water on it, it's very much Michael Harris-ish, right? It's very much Pete Crow Armstrong-ish, where he swings outside of the zone way too well. Doyle's always had good recognition of the strike zone.
Well, I was just saying because like he fell off though too.
Yeah.
Like he's been bad. But okay, so you're mentioning Harris.
I think Doyle's issues are off the field, right? Doyle had that really, really public miscarriage,
right?
And I think those are like I think
this year's a washout.
Yeah, it is just stuff going on off the field. But with Rafaela, like I think there will be cold snaps because he swings outside of the zone so much. But I think overall, at the end of the season, you're going to look at those numbers and go, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I just worry that he's going to be a bit overdrafted come next year.
I think that's
because there is a lot of volatility to this profile.
Definitely possible, but it is going to depend on these next 2 months because they could be such a wide variety of outcomes because we're not here yet as like a fully formed great hitter for Rafaela.
I'm about to start my first draft of the 2026 season because I do it
disgusting.
Well, I'm in a 3-sport league, so we have to draft.
Oh, that's right.
That's acceptable.
So we have to draft football before the football season starts, and it starts like the draft starts any day. So I'm really interested to see where Rafaela.
Yeah, that's going to be nuts. Kurtz third round. Vlad, with Rafaela, again, coming in, I'm curious where you were because I saw 26% K, 3% walk. This guy has no idea of the plate. He can volume homers and steals the way he did last year, 15, 19 respectively. But is he going to continue to get that PT even with the contract, or is he going to fall into super util? I thought he was going to fall into super util, defense only type of guy. Again, I got a fat L on Rafaela. But where were you coming in the year, and how much do you buy the surge that we've seen now? Because he has, let me give you some numbers before you answer. He has added 79 points to his WRC plus from 75 to 154. So give us some thoughts on Ceddanne Rafaela, pardon me.
I was in the same boat as you guys. With my VDP rankings where I've got players, you kind of have the difference between that and ADP. I had him about 2 and 3 rounds lower than his actual price. And so, of course, I have no shares of him.
So let's poke holes in this so that we look better. Be like, this isn't even that good, y'all. We didn't really get it wrong because he's gonna fail in the future.
Well, so then what happened was, so it's a lot of sort of things of like, oh, he can't repeat last year, and it's relative to the price, and then the other guys there in the mix. But what happened is towards the end of camp, read something about how he changed his batting stance altogether against lefties. And so this is a guy that had like a 70-something WRC plus and a 35% strikeout rate against lefties last year. Now he's over 100 WRC plus and reduced that strikeout rate nearly half. So now it's close to like 19% against lefties.
Rafaela doesn't even have a good BABIP against lefties. He has a 240. If that evens out with everything else he's doing with the new power stroke, he could even get better against lefties. So that put you back on him a little bit more where you weren't so far away. Did you end up with him anywhere, Vlad?
No, I do not have any Rafaela, but he just looks like a baller. Just feels like, he fits on that team, just gets it done. And
he's just cool.
The other part was the concern of like, oh, he's going to be hitting near the bottom of the lineup. Yep. He got so lucky with RBIs last year. It's not going to happen this year, but
all the issues I had too. And, again, I'm not afraid to take an L. That's a fat L with Rafaela. Joe, I'm going to spin it forward completely with you next year. I know you need the next 2 months to really decide. But if you were a disgusting sicko like one Justin Mason and you were doing a 2026 draft this week, where would you be tempted to take Rafaela? Is he a top 5 rounder already? Is he top 10? Top 10 rounds got to be for sure. But where would you feel comfortable taking him? 2 answers. Where do you think he goes and where are you comfortable if they differ?
Assuming he continues at his pace, I think he's a top 100 pick. Pretty handily.
And you'll pay that, or you just think he'll go top 100 and you want cheaper?
I can't see myself paying it personally. And maybe I could come around on this. If he finishes with like 27 homers and 28 steals and he's hitting 285, it's going to be hard to fade him. Sure. But the swing and miss issues are still pretty drastic, I think. 42% O swing. Like, he has a 15% swinging strike rate with an 18% strikeout rate. That's pretty wild. I feel like that's something that will tick up. Our projections think they'll tick up, although not significantly. They think he'll be like a 22, 23% strikeout rate guy, which would be fine.
And that's still an improvement for Rafaela. I want to be clear. Even if he did regress to this, it would still be an improvement over last year.
Yeah, he's a really tricky eval for me. He does feel like somebody who could come crashing down to earth at any moment. He'll still get the playing time because his defense is so elite, and something that I think I don't know if anybody has pointed this out so far, but they're actually just letting him play center. Whereas last year he played second, he played third, he was bouncing around a little bit. So I feel like part of it, he played short a lot. Maybe part of his success this year is the fact that he doesn't have to worry about playing 4 different positions on the field. He can just focus on his primary position, and the defensive metrics are better this year than they were last year as well. So that's part of it, I think. In terms of next year, I feel like, if he's going as a top 100 pick, I'm probably going to not be that interested. I know I'm kind of hemming and hawing here. He's
I'm with you. I'm torn too. I would probably fence it until I get these last 2 months. If you ask me today, I'm going to say no. But if I see a little bit more, because I've been focused on him a little bit more this last month with Rafaela than I was early on, and I'll be watching him the rest of the year. But right now, I would pass on top 100 real quick. Vlad, top 100 on Rafaela, yay or nay for you?
Nay, but also I think it'll be. I think there are just so many guys getting the double-digit homers and stolen bases, and so
that he might not go that high.
That he might be closer to like 150. But again, we're splitting hairs.
Would you pay that then? 150 area, 120 to 150?
It's too early to tell. I don't want to lock myself in. If I had to, I would say no.
Justin, top 100, would you be paying that for Rafaela?
I don't think top 100, but top 150, I think I might.
So he's in that 101 to 150.
I think his ADP. I think he's going to go higher than that, though. Like, looking at his ADP just for main events, because for all NFBC drafts it was 183. Main events a little bit lower at 201. A little bit lower for main events, but I feel like the push.
I think probably will jump.
I think too, he started playing second base more recently, and so if he gains that second base eligibility for next season, he's played second base in.
Oh yeah, he's got 6 games there.
But 5 games since July 12th.
To Joe's point earlier, he wasn't bouncing around the way he was. And you never know how a guy's going to take to that super utility role. Like, it never bothered Ben Zobrist to have 4 different gloves in a single game. So, I do. And again, we don't need to keep going on Rafaela because it really does matter how these next 2 months go to really decide his value. And if they go well, he's going to be a top 50 to 70 pick, in my opinion. Yeah. Marcus Semien, here he is. This is the one, right? And I even started to give up on my boy. I'm like, oh, man, here we are 2 months in, paired with last year, 34 years old. Never doubt Marcus Semien. How dare you? Now, the composite numbers are still pretty unimpressive. It's a 96 WRC plus. You're not going to be writing home about that. But it was a 56 through May, Justin, and he has a 132 since June 1st. Was this inevitable with Marcus Semien, or did he make any sort of changes to foster this improvement for Semien?
I mean, I think some of this was inevitable, that he was just going to be better rest of the way. He was just too bad. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I wasn't nervous. I mean, he's my most.
I was scared.
Yeah, he's my most rostered hitter on all of my teams this year. Just because I love the volume. You love the volume you get from a guy like Semien, and you do worry that at times, like, hey, this is a 34, almost 35-year-old guy. Like, is he going to just, fall off the cliff at some point? And it looked like he had, but things have gotten back on schedule. The underlying numbers were always supportive that he was going to be better. I didn't know if he was going to be this good, but I'm glad to see that he has completely turned it around, is looking like the guy he's always been.
Vlad, you're free to speak on Semien for this year's changes, but I'm also curious. Again, I'm not going to commit you to any sort of price, but is he going to tumble greatly in price next year? Because I felt like Marcus Semien, you find the right room, he was still pretty cheap, and Justin and I would jump on that. But I feel like his value is going to crater next year. Is he going to be going like 250 or later type vibe?
Yeah, there are a lot of players of that profile that you see just fall into 200s. There's just so many players that are going to be moving up. And I mean, this guy that hit 237 last season, he's hitting the 220s this year. He's not going to get the triple digit runs there, might hit 20 home runs. We'll see. But I mean, it's been a rough and tumble season in general for the Rangers offense. You got, Corey Seager missing part
Really
of the
has.
season, Wyatt Langford firing their hitting coach, like Berger hurt, often on the IL. And Semien, I mean, he's hit 5th, 6th, bottom of the lineup, back to clean. I mean, it's kind of been, all over the place. And I don't know, just not somebody I'm particularly interested in or too excited about for these next couple of months. Just the Rangers in general, not interested.
Unbelievably dreadful numbers in the leadoff spot for Semien. And even though you would never want to put too much on spot, I think at some point you got to change the mojo there. 141, 209, 192. Again, even if you don't believe in 86 plate appearances as a viable sample, if you're the Rangers, you're trying to win, you can't have a 209 at the top of the order. And you're right. There's been a malaise on that team. It's turned a little bit, though, even to the point where if they have a good week here, I don't know if they're necessarily going to sell. So
I don't think they are selling.
Yeah, and I think I understand why. I think they have a good enough team here. So another one that's going to be very similar to Semien is Story, but he had the injuries. That Semien stays healthy, and that's part of why you liked him so much, Justin. But Joe, with Trevor Story, did you see any reasons to stick with him? Because with a guy like that, when he gets hurt, we all have said at different points in this show that when somebody gets hurt, the keep cut calculus is much different. Were you advocating keeping Story, who has now completely turned things around to where he's got some pretty good numbers over the last month plus?
No, I definitely told people to cut Trevor Story. I'll get out in front of that for sure. I cater a lot more to the shallow league players.
Right, which is quicker moves without a doubt.
And I think Story in those shallower leagues was somebody that, you could have held on if you believed in him, but the Red Sox as an offense were not doing well as a whole. He was pretty brutal. Like his WRC plus in May was 13. So I can understand why people would have cut bait on him. The thing with Trevor Story is that every time in his career that he has played a full season, he's returned value. He has been a good fantasy player. Every year he's hit 100 games or more, and including the COVID season where he was under it. But he is pretty consistently, when he's been on the field, he's returned fantasy value. Even this year with an 89 WRC plus, we're still pacing out to a 25 homer, 25 stolen base season. So
kind of nasty.
It's kind of ugly to look under the hood here a little bit and try and figure out what to do with him. And you've talked about what are we doing with these guys for next year? I can't see myself being interested in Story heading into.
It's going to be cheap, though. I think it's going to be cheap again, unless these last 2 months put some real spice on it. I think it's going to be really cheap. But do you want to deal with a 33-year-old raggedy Trevor Story? You probably don't. We do have another big handful of guys here that I want to get to, so we're probably going to do one person per, unless you really got a point you got to get in there. I want to go to you, Vlad, for Hunter Goodman. Now, he's not like these last two guys, these studs that have been there for years and years, although Story's been a little bit less so because he's been hurt so much. But Hunter Goodman came in with the catcher eligibility that really made people gravitate toward him. I was one such person. I got him in the main, which made it easier to stick with him, but he has completely flipped around now to, I wonder, top 5 catcher next year, Hunter Goodman. 18 homers, 56 ribs, 281 average. Remember, he had rotten plate skills last year, too, that made people scared that he'd just be hitting my body weight. So where you at on Hunter Goodman rest away and into the future?
I mean, if there's anything that I did right this season, it's nailing all the late round catchers. So my teams are Ivan Herrera, Hunter Goodman, Agustin Ramirez in DC.
That's great.
And I'm thinking, I forgot about somebody else, but
yeah, because it was a deep pool this year to hit late with catchers.
Yeah, and so what I liked about him is that he was somebody that had played in the outfield last year. You knew he wouldn't be locked into catcher, so he would get a little bit more consistent playing time. Yep. And I felt like the fact that he hit like 170 or something last year wasn't a true reflection of who he was, because in the minors, like for example, in a season and a half in AAA, the guy actually hit over 300, and of course that's not who he is. Not a high, average hitter, whatnot. But, there is a huge difference between his batting average as XBA. Of course, XBA not predictive, but nevertheless, you can expect the slide on the batting average. The power is there. It's legit. He's hitting the ball 91, 92 miles per hour, 12, 13% barrel rate. There are going to be some slowdowns, but yeah, you're looking at a guy with like 25 home runs. Top 5 catcher? I don't know. I'd have to take a glance at the player pool. It feels a little tough. I feel like might be buying a little high there.
Yeah,
I think said it, Vlad. You said it to me in Arizona. Sorry to cut you off, Paul, but I remember
go ahead.
saying, just during some random shooting the shit, walking around the hotel, you just made a passing comment about Hunter Goodman's really cheap. And I should have wrote that down and drafted him.
Words of wisdom being shared with you, Joe.
That's why
He's
you
been
go to
amazing.
F-Pass. That's why you go to F-Pass.
That's right. That's right, because you just get to randomly chat about how good Hunter Goodman is, and to the point where even when he has a 95, and again, he's not quite like all these other guys. Where he wasn't failing beyond belief. He had a 95 WRC plus through May, but then he's turned on with a 159 lately. He's become a dude, and I could see him getting cut in some one catcher leagues where they're like, this Colorado catcher thing isn't working, but he's really turned it around and he's been awesome. Justin, do you like him top 5 or more top 10 next year for Goodman?
I was looking at it. I think he might be pretty close to top 5, at least top 7, because you got to think Wilson Contreras is going to lose eligibility. You put William Contreras back in there, but that still puts Goodman like 5, 6, 7.
Is Adell still top 5 for you guys?
I think he will be.
I love Adell, but
would you guys top 3 now? I think Adell will be like top 6. He's going to fall a little bit, but I think he bounces back a little.
You taking Goodman over Adell straight up next year?
I don't know. I think so.
Now. Yeah, I have to do my projections on that one first.
I'll take a stance. I might. That's a stance. I might. All right, Justin, you get to have Willy Adames, because again, I had to talk you into how good that signing was. You're like, he's doing so well right now. 78 WRC plus through May, 138. Again, this one feels like an inevitable one, yeah?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I mean, he's just too good of a hitter. I knew the numbers were going to take a step back moving from Milwaukee.
That's true.
It's a worse park, a worse offense around him in terms of just the overall talent. But, you knew he wasn't going to be as bad as he was in the first half. I think this was an easy buy low.
Yeah, they're one of the easier ones of the year, much easier than like Semien, because Adames is quite a bit younger. Joe Adell. Who thinks they're the biggest Joe Adell fan on this panel? Nobody else is even going for it except Justin. So, Justin, I'm going to stay with you on Joe Adell. Why?
I've just always been infatuated with
I know, I'm teasing you. I love him too.
Is
it real though? Let's brass tacks. Is it real with Joe Adell?
I think it is real-ish. He's made consistent strides over the last 4 seasons improving his own contact, from 74% in 2022 to 79% in 2023 to 81% last year to 84%. And at the same time, making minor strides in the O swing. We've always known there's power and speed there. He's learning on the job. He's just been a really, really raw talent. This is why you don't give up on these guys that are physically gifted, because they might figure it out, especially on a team like the Angels.
Well, especially when the price trainers, right?
Yeah. And the Angels, they give these guys time. They don't just ship them out. They, the Angels could have traded him away the way Seattle traded away Kelnick, and no one would have batted an eye, but the Angels stuck with him. They've tried to develop him, and he's finally coming around. Do I think he's going to be a superstar? Probably not, but there's still superstar potential in that bat.
The only issue to what you said there, the only thing was the speed went away. 15 for 25 last year, though, so he wasn't particularly efficient. So they maybe put a yellow or red light on him. He's 3 for 3 this year, Joe Adell, but you can't argue with 21 bombs in 95 games and a palatable 237 average. I know that's not anything to write home about, but it was 207 last year, which is borderline unrosterable. When it's 237, you can roster that in any format, in my opinion. So
it's hard to steal bases when you're not on first as much as you're on second or just jogging around.
That's a great point, and they hit bombs with the Angels.
What do you make of the expected batting average being close to 290 for Joe?
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
I think it's because I'll let you say something too, Justin, but I think it's because they expect the BABIP to regress, but he doesn't have good career BABIP. So I think he's one of those guys where the XBA favors him a little bit more because of how they think a BABIP should regress, and his just doesn't usually do that.
Well, I mean, there's also one of the reasons BABIPs have been lower in the past because he hasn't been hitting the ball hard. His average exit velocity is up 2 miles an hour this year. His hard hit
that's a big part of it. Then
4 miles an hour. His barrel percentage is up 5 percentage points. I think he will have a better batting average way, and I think it seems weird to say you could buy low on Joe Adell right now, but I think you kind of can, because
I could see people trying to trade him.
Like I said, there is still superstar potential in this bat. I don't know if it gets unlocked this year, but it could. And I do think the underlying numbers are saying that, he actually should be better than this.
Joe, how old is Joe Adell?
He's probably my age. He's probably 26.
Nailed it. 26. That's kind of crazy. And that's why, like, when you first said there's still superstar potential, I raised my eyebrow, and then I saw 26. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I think he still could get all the way there. I think it would take another jump, but he could definitely get there. Vlad, Joey Ortiz was one I did struggle with. I loved him coming into the year, drafted him in a bunch of spots, and I did cut bait. And it was one of those ones where I'm like, it might come out of it, but he's 40 WRC plus through May with no fantasy juice, because even at his best, he's like a teens homers and steals. So that, over the course of 2 months, that's just not much. So I did cut bait on him, and he's only jumped up to a 105, but obviously that's still a 65-point surge. He's back to the guy I thought he was, which is just nice glue, middle of the roster sort of vibe with Joey Ortiz. A, is there more? B, am I an idiot for cutting?
Yeah. So through that period,
first, guys. He said, yeah, when I asked if I was an idiot.
That's how I answer, right? No, that's how I answer things. It's like, yeah, but no.
I know. I'm teasing you.
At the end of May, he was the worst player in baseball. It was crazy. The worst hitter. Pretty wild to see. And I thought that, he is somebody that is maybe in the bottom rung. I don't think he's somebody that's ever going to be, like a top player. He's not somebody that I'm ever, going to be incredibly targeting. But, I'm looking at power metrics. Like if outside of speed, I'm looking at, where are you going to hit in the lineup? Do you have the opportunity to move up? Your consistency, ballpark, division, all these things. But also, it's the light barrel rate. Doesn't hit the ball hard. Like those things matter. If I'm, if I'm going after one of those guys, it's intentional. It's like I'm going after a Quan or a Simpson for like specific categories. Ortiz doesn't really give me a boost in any one specific category.
That's a great point. What does he really bring? And I guess I was kind of betting on him being an accumulator, which, I mean, like, there's value in that player type, but I think it's maybe better to fall into an accumulator than to directly go out and chase them like that. Because he was 11-11 last year. All I was really expecting was a little bit of improvement, but for 650 plate appearances, because his defense guarantees his playing time, which is pretty boring. And I paid a price representative to it. But I think you make a good point about, like, well, what are you really getting? What is the best case? And I think the best case was probably 2020. And that was like pipe dream 95th percentile. Go ahead, Justin.
You know what the best case is, right? He's just going to be like Jeremy Pena, who was this guy who came up, had a really good like flash in his rookie season. People got really excited and like, oh, well, he did this in his rookie season, so now look what he's going to do. But growth is linear, man. Like, sometimes that rookie season is the high water mark, and I think people will jump off of him. And I think he will be cheap next year and probably worth whatever you end up paying for.
I think Pena is a great comp because, he fell down for 2 years and he was that boring accumulator. And then 15-20 last year started to get a little bit more intrigue. And then this year popped off with a stupid injury interrupting him, which is so stupid and annoying. But yeah, I like your points there on Joey Ortiz, Vlad. Look, we're staying with the Brewers all the way here, the rest of the way in. These last two guys don't quite fit the mold here because people weren't drafting them necessarily with great expectations. They were kind of like buzzy guys a little bit. At least Caleb Durbin was. But Isaac Collins and Caleb Durbin have also completely flipped their seasons. Again, they were kind of buzzy, sleeper, fab type guys that didn't do crap for a while, but they've both come around. Isaac Collins has added 63 points to his WRC plus up to 149 since June 1st. And Caleb Durbin's added 59 points up to 137 since June 1st. And they both bring speed, 4 steals apiece in 38 and 39 games, respectively. Joe, start with you. Between Collins and Durbin, do you have a preference between these two the rest of the way?
I feel like Durbin is a little bit safer from a profile perspective. I'm not like a huge fan of him because I think that he is kind of lacking in terms of like the power. I know he has 5 home runs, but I don't think that there's a ton of power there. If you're looking at the barrel rates at 3%, 25% hard hit rate. Right. I'm not sure how much I buy into Collins in the long run. Not to say that he is going to be bad or anything. Again, just looking at the data, he has a 5% barrel rate, 38% hard hit rate. He doesn't really jump off the page like the plate. The zone contact is good. He doesn't chase, doesn't have a high swinging strike rate. So I think that they're both fine. And I think they're both, if we're talking to like 15 team league players, absolute must rosters. But do you think that they warrant adding in like standard home leagues type? Like, do you think that they've reached that level?
Probably not.
No, let's bring in the Fab Whisperer, Vlad. Collins and Durbin, both on Milwaukee here. They both now established themselves with some pretty positive skills. Their composite numbers are now positive. Are they 10, 12 team type ads? Or are they really just 15 team and deeper type fodder?
I don't know. It might seem like there's another day in paradise with Collins, but I don't think that's the case. Give me Caleb Durbin, the guy that's the higher rated prospect. Collins was a 9th rounder from the Rockies. He's 28 years old. The one interesting
the Rockies messed up someone weird.
Shocker. He started off as like the short side platoon guy, and he just started popping
Collins
off Collins found his way into the lineup. The other thing I didn't really know about him beforehand, he was a big stolen base guy in the minors. He was stealing between 25 to 32 bases, every year. But he is more likely the guy that could start fizzling a little bit. And Caleb Durbin, I think, is just going to get better and better. He's the one of this trio between Ortiz, Collins, and Durbin that I like best.
I was pretty big on Durbin coming into the year because he was getting that buzz. I jumped on that buzz. Only got him in one spot. I did cut before things turned, and I actually have Collins in another league. Weirdly enough, that same league, there wasn't a 1-for-1 move there. Justin, I'm going to bring this to you because it's about contact rate and everything. Not all contact is great. Caleb Durbin only has a 9% K rate. That's fantastic. 271 BABIP. You think, well, that has to change. XBA, 251. So is this the opposite of what we were saying, like with Kurtz, where this is just a bunch of shitty contact? So even though there's a ton of it, the XBA and those numbers aren't expecting any sort of major regression if it's just a bunch of easy fieldable grounders, right?
This feels like early career Sal Frelick, right? Which is another Brewer, right? A guy who could make a lot of contact, but it didn't really matter because the contact didn't get out in the infield.
Mm-hmm.
Now Frelick's put on some weight, right? In the offseason, came in with like 20 pounds more muscle, and that has helped Frelick have a better year. Durbin's going to need to do something like that for this to work. Because it really doesn't matter how much you put the ball in play if it's not getting past the shortstop a lot of the time.
Right. So, unless it's just a terrible defensive shortstop, it's just not going to matter.
I mean, you're talking about a 25% hard hit rate, an average exit velocity of 84 miles per hour, and a 3.5% barrel rate. He just does not strike the ball hard enough to matter. Pitchers are not going to be afraid to throw him in the zone, even though they know he's going to make contact, because the defense will pick that pitcher up more often than not. So until he adds some more power to that bat, I think pitchers are just going to attack him and go, okay, go hit it. So we'll just get you out on the base paths.
Right. Not try to knock the bat out of Durbin's hand and see what happens. But again, the 5 homers, little bit of a power stroke there. If he can make that little adjustment, I do think there is something to like with Caleb Durbin. But there it is. We're going to cap it there with our guys that have completely turned their seasons around. These guys were all either bad or off, because they weren't all bad, but they were off through May. And then since June 1st, they've been amongst the best hitters in baseball. Vlad, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Why don't you let folks know what's going on over at FTN Fantasy lately?
Real quick, I wanted to point out, we were talking about Trevor Story.
Yeah.
He's 17 for 17 in stolen bases. Pretty crazy.
That's nuts.
Wow.
That's really good. Okay, well, you actually didn't speak on him when we were talking about him. Is he somebody that you could see going to the well with in the future? Because again, I think even if he has anything short of like an electric, he's in the news every day, 2 months, he's not going to raise his price very much. So is Trevor Story somebody you look to buy cheap on next year?
I think that you take whatever gifts you have, because he is on the pace for 25 plus. The average isn't absolutely killing you, and he's right there in the middle of that lineup. He's producing, he's healthy. In fact, his power Statcast metrics are as close to his heyday from 2019, 2018 that we've seen. So if he stays healthy, just consider it gift, enjoy it, and then just don't buy back in next year.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because again, with the health, I just have a hard time buying even cheaply, because then I think we're going to put ourselves in the same position where through May, he looks like crap. And you're like, should I cut Trevor Story? Even though you didn't invest a big pick, it's like, I know he's good when he's playing, like you said, Joe, but how bankable is he? All right. But that's a great point about his 17 for 17. I did not realize that. And it just is a, data point 10 billion as to show that you don't need blazing speed to be a good base stealer. You can just be smart. And I'm sure he still has some speed, but he's not a burner anymore. All right, Vlad. FTN Fantasy. What's it all about? What's going on? Talk to us about your fab article as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've still got what 38% of the season left, and I'm not doing football stuff. I'm grinding away at the baseball. I am not leaving people behind. Lots of fab work. I'm actually going to get started on it for the weekend this evening. So my Trust the Gut fab column start out with a couple data tables on Thursday and Friday. I changed that, adjust the data over the course of the weekend to kind of give you the best, most accurate readings on where these guys are going to fall, how much you should be bidding on them. We got a bullpen report with Dan Thompson. He's awesome. Mike Mayer does the drop column. Joe Orrico right here, and Adam Young do some great work for shallower leagues, this waiver wire column. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm going to have John Posma on my podcast for this week. And yeah, this is awesome, guys. Thank you for having me. And, this is me talking baseball with 3 old friends. Honestly, no better, life therapy than I can have in this.
Could probably go 3 hours standing on our heads here. But we will keep it in the interest of time. Joe, I don't give you enough opportunity to do this because you do the show with us once a week, and I got to give you an opportunity to talk about where your stuff's at, man, because it's not on Fangraphs. So why don't you tell folks where they can find you when you're not chatting?
Yeah, Fantasy Pros. They all kind of sounds Fangraphs.
They're all fantasy.
They all start with an F. So sometimes I trip over my words a little bit. But you'll see me trip over my words regularly starting on August 1st once Joe Pisapia moseys on over to football.
That little piece of pizza loving son of a gun.
Somebody in the chat today actually said, bring Orrico in. Pisapia is too negative. He's like, I'm from New York and Joe's from Toronto. What do you expect? So yeah, you'll get to see me taking over there. With the help of some good friends, Chris Welsh and Casey Bubba will be taking you through the last months of the fantasy baseball season. Trio. Yeah, it'll be like 2 of us at a time.
Duos,
Get all 3, but maybe last day of the season, Joe will come back and we'll do like a big group pod probably, and see if I can get one of you guys on for that too, because it's always a lot of fun. But yeah, 3 times a week it'll be on Fantasy Pros, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can check out the FTN articles usually on Sunday. Every now and then I'll switch around and do Fridays, but I'll tweet out anything over there. And then Sleeper and the Bust, as you guys are listening to, usually once a week.
Love it. Justin, do you do anything else in the fantasy sports industry?
Nah.
Okay, cool. Then we can end the episode. Vlad, thanks so much for joining us. Joe, great talking with you. Talk to you next week. Take care, guys.
Take it easy, fellas.
Back with 2 steps tomorrow.